I want to go to the chairman of the Congressional Black Caucus, Congressman Hakeem Jeffries, who's joining me now to get his reaction on what happened. Congressman Jeffries, thanks for joining me this morning. What's your reaction to what authorities have done in Minneapolis in terms of the charges that were laid against Derek Chauvin, but not against the other officers?
Well, the charge against Derek Chauvin is a step in the right direction, but of course more needs to be done. There were multiple officers on the scene who essentially stood by, did nothing, or perhaps assisted in subduing George Floyd in an inhumane fashion. So a full and complete investigation needs to take place, and every single officer needs to be held accountable for the murder that unfolded before America.
What do you make of the delay, the fact that this happened on Monday and protesters had video? They had first one piece of video, then two pieces of video, then three pieces of video, and yet the county attorney here, Hennepin County attorney, was saying there was more work to be done. There was some evidence that didn't support a criminal charge. And the people we were talking to on the streets were saying, what more do you need? We thought that once there was video, there would be justice, and now there's ample video. And, you know, Congressman, you and I have talked about this over the last few years. There has been ample video in so many of these cases, but for the people on the streets who have been protesting for the last 4 nights here and in places across the country, their way of looking at this is, what will help? If there's video and you can't get an arrest, what will justice ever look like for African Americans?
Well, that is what is at the core of the problem. That we've seen police violence, we've seen police brutality. Often it has played itself out before the eyes of the world and the American people, and yet there is no officer accountability at the end of the day. Here in New York City, of course, there's a great deal of frustration because we've been down this road multiple times. Amadou Diallo in the 1990s, an innocent African immigrant, shot at and killed 42 shots. 4 officers found not guilty. Sean Bell in 2005 or 2006, on the eve of his wedding day, shot at and killed. 50 shots were fired at him. He was unarmed, of course. The officers were found not guilty. And then in 2013, Eric Garner choked to death in plain sight, and Daniel Pantaleo was let off by the grand jury and then not charged by the Department of Justice for a civil rights killing. And so these are just 3 of the names. And there are names like this all across America. And that's the frustration that you're seeing right now.
And some of the protesters yesterday were just standing in front of the police, mere feet from them, reading those names, describing what happened to them. The eerie similarity to Eric Garner saying, I can't breathe, I can't breathe. And then you watch this man, in the words of former detective, NYPD detective Mark Claxton, narrate his own death on video. And there are people who are saying this is a tipping point. But Congressman, you and I have covered these things. We've discussed these things. They thought Trayvon Martin was a tipping point. They thought Michael Brown was a tipping point. And there are others in the crowd who say there is no tipping point. In fact, the president of the United States gave what some people would thought a much needed address yesterday. And he talked about China exclusively. He had no comment on this except some incendiary ones that he had been putting out via Twitter.
No reasonable person expects any scintilla of leadership coming from Donald Trump or 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue at this particular point in time. But Congress does need to step up and engage in systematic change that will be transformative. Address the racial injustice in America, address the social injustice in America, address the economic injustice throughout America. You know, these are protests that are taking place that are multiracial in nature. This is not just the African-American community that you are seeing express themselves. Here in Brooklyn and throughout New York City, it's a multiracial group of people who recognize that something is very wrong in this country and that real action must take place. Hopefully, you're going to see that from the United States Congress.
Congressman, thank you very much. I'm sorry we keep having these discussions, and I can say with some certainty this won't be the last time we have these discussions. Congressman Hakeem Jeffries is the chairman of the Congressional Black Caucus.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.